Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Organizing Life's Daily Demands. My name is Peter Gordon, and I'm the president of New York Financial Organizers. We help people pay their bills, file insurance claims, and do all the non investment side of personal finance. And we find that it's integral to helping them organize the daily needs that they have. And the purpose of this podcast is to interview people in other fields that might be able to help in organizing our clients and viewers' lives. And so I am really thrilled to have Elsa W. Smith with us today. And she is a wonderful attorney, and I'm really looking forward to having everybody learn more about her. So how you doing, Elsa?
Good morning, Peter. It is wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest on your show.
Sure. Elsa and I know each other from a program called Video Socials. We've never met outside of this little box here. And but for how long has it been? 3.5 years?
It's almost, I think, yeah, almost at least three,
Yeah, it was
3 years.
before the pandemic. And
Yeah, for sure.
it's a great program, and we've learned a lot about each other's business, and we actually have a lot of synergy between us. The difference is, though, I'm in New York, Elsa's in Maryland, so we occasionally we refer business, but mainly we learn from one another, and that's the purpose of this podcast. Is I believe that Elsa is. There are a lot of people who do what Elsa does, but Elsa is unique in so many different ways, and I'm really looking forward to her sharing her message. Um, so, give us a little bit of background about how you got to where you are now.
Okay. I won't give you like the full, Encyclopedia Britannica, and I'm dating myself by even mentioning that.
That's true.
Uh, Young people today
Give
might
us the
not even know what that
Wikipedia
is.
version.
Absolutely. Well, I've been practicing law for over 20 years. And I'm originally, I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I was raised in South Florida, went to business school and law school at the University of Miami. Go Canes. Um, and did a number of different things, primarily focused on criminal defense and criminal appeals, believe it or not, before I got into estate planning. I also did some med mal defense. So my journey wasn't a straight path into estate planning. It was more of a path of discovery and figuring out what was a good fit for who I am. So fast forward, I relocated to the Maryland, D.C. area a little over 15 years ago when I got engaged and subsequently got married. Um, and worked for very like, top law firms in DC doing e-discovery and contract work. Um, did that for a while, made a lot of great money, but there was still something in me that was wanting to start my own practice again because I had a practice in Florida. So in Q4 of 2012, I believe I launched my practice. And initially it was, just focusing on what I knew, which was criminal defense. And that was fine for a while. And just so your listeners and your audience knows that I am of Afro-Cuban descent and I am a native Spanish speaker. And that skill, that Spanish speaking skill, worked to my benefit in the work that I was doing, in the criminal defense work I was doing. I was handling a lot of matters and representing individuals who didn't speak English or didn't have English as their first language, right? The problem, not with that skill, but the reason that precipitated my shift into estate planning was a lot of the matters in that I was handling were causing a lot of stress, and you start to take stuff home with you. The matters, the charges, the allegations were more serious. Some were publicized. And you take that stuff home, and then you start to sit back and reflect, well, where do you want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? So that really precipitated a change for me to think about how I could give back, because throughout my life, throughout my legal career, I've always led with a heart of service, wanting to be of service to the greater community. Um, so in talking to my colleagues, fast forward again, I came, into this estate planning area, and like all good attorneys do who want to learn more, we took uh, CLEs, continuing legal education classes, and I did a deep dive. And it's interesting, Peter, because I realized that there's a lot about estate planning and probate work that really resonated with what I wanted to do and who I am as a person. And funny enough, it took me many years to rediscover my interest, my love of estate planning. Here's why I say rediscover. I didn't have my estate plan until I got married
Yeah.
a little over 15 years ago. And I tell people, I said, I finally felt like a grown up when I had my estate plan. I had my portfolio in front of me. I'm like, gee, this is what this is what grown-ups do, right? So I reconnected with that feeling that I had when I had my estate plan, and I wanted to recreate it for other people. So that's really, the impetus for me, focusing on estate planning, and probate work. My niche is, and my tagline will tell you, empowering women through estate planning. Um, why women, and I know we're going to talk about that, in a little bit, but uh, we women have been vastly underserved. I think that women, not only in the workplace, but in as we are accumulating assets, we are accumulating wealth, we are heads of homes, we are wearing all these hats, but we don't have safety nets. We're not creating safety nets to protect us. We do a good job in protecting everybody else, but
Right.
what are we doing
Right.
to protect
Well,
ourselves
that's
as
the
women?
natural instinct of females.
Absolutely. So we have a boutique firm. It's the law offices of Elsa W. Smith. We are based in Annapolis, Maryland, but we also serve the District of Columbia. We serve people from all over Maryland. And we often get referrals from professionals like yourself, Peter, from other states who have folks that are either relocated. Sometimes they have family in this area, in the Maryland, DC area, and they're looking for a state counsel to assist. So the bulk of my practice, thankfully, comes from referrals.
Right. Right. Yeah. And yours and mine both. This is really interesting because I know about your criminal background, your criminal law background.
Mm-hmm.
And because you're such a natural, caring person from when I listen to you. So that's really interesting. Why do you think it's important for women, especially, to create estate plans?
Oh, geez, there's so many reasons, but for one thing, and the stats bear this out. The World Health Organization, I believe, has women outliving men on average by 5 years.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right? So we're
Although that's
living
changing,
longer.
it's interesting. It's changing a little bit as more women are working now as a percentage of once was, because it adds stress to their lives. It's kind of interesting. But
I know. It's like we move forward, but yet
yeah, right.
there's all the things that come with it. So there's longevity. The other thing is, women are more likely to experience changes in their marital status. What am I talking about? Primarily divorce, and widowhood. Because if we're
Mm-hmm.
outliving men, so those are significant life events that can impact a woman's financial stability. And an estate plan helps to really create a blueprint to how are we going to protect the assets that you have. If not all estate plans create like tax shelters, and that's kind of like a subset of what estate planning can do. But it's a blueprint. How are we going to protect assets that you have? And with working with other professionals, financial professionals, among others, we collectively help you envision what your future is going to look like, what your legacy is going to look like, right? So it's really a collaborative team approach. So marital status is the other one. And caregiving responsibilities that we have. Women typically are the primary caregivers of children. And now we're seeing, they're adult parents.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm in my early 50s. And
Could have fooled me.
thank you. I am, and along with many of my friends, we experience, the our parents going through cognitive decline, having significant medical issues, and all of we experienced all that together. In some cases where it was feasible, some people became the caregiver. They couldn't relocate their parents to like an assisted living facility if they needed, like 24-hour care, or so forth. But even in those situations where they were where they needed to be treated or cared for in an ALF, you still have that responsibility. You still have to go, see your parents, care, check on them. You don't abdicate, they're your parents. You don't abdicate that responsibility to someone else.
Depending on the individual. But yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's there's that stress that comes along with it. So you're not, if you are like many of my clients are, if you are a mom, you and perhaps a spouse, so you've got responsibilities to spouse, responsibility to kids, and now we also have responsibilities to take care of our aging parents.
Right.
So we're pulled
the sandwich generation.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other reason is income disparities. Despite the progress that we as women have made, women still tend to earn less than men for pretty much the same work, and are more likely to take time out of the workforce in order to care for young children and parents, as I mentioned before. So an estate plan can help you plan for the what ifs, and help make sure that, again, that you're taken care of, that you have the assets needed to get you through those periods of where you're not out in the workforce. I don't want to say not working, because sometimes you're working twice as hard at home than you may be in the workforce. So I'm very careful about that.
Yeah, I know that's work.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you say estate plan, what makes up an estate plan?
Oh, well, an estate plan, like I said, well, first of all, let me say what I tell many of my clients is that an estate plan is a love letter to your loved ones, about what you want to happen to them, to your assets when you are no longer here. But it is also telling the world what you want, what kind of health care you want. If you're in an end of life or near end of life situation, there are a series of documents, most of which your viewers have probably heard about. We're talking about a will, in many cases a trust,
right?
And when I say trust, there are different types of trust, and an experienced estate planner can help guide you to the particular trust that works for your situation. We're also talking about medical directives in the state of Maryland. They're called advanced directive. In other states, they may be called healthcare powers of attorney, right?
Or
so
proxy.
that's or healthcare proxy, right? So that document is the one that's going to appoint someone that you choose, a trusted individual, to speak for you when you cannot speak for yourself, when you're in a critical care situation. And it's going to identify the levels of care that you want or don't want, depending on, particular factors or situations. And then we have a power of attorney, a financial power of attorney,
Right.
which is
My favorite document.
yeah, I know. Yeah,
It is.
and a power of attorney. And let me make this clear to your viewers and listeners: a power of attorney is only good while you are alive. I can't tell you how many people call my office after a loved one dies and say, "Oh, and I have the power of attorney." I'm like, okay, that's great, but it's not going to help you right now. Now we're having another conversation if your loved one has passed away. So a power of attorney, a financial power of attorney, allows you to appoint a person, again, trusted, underline, bold, trusted person, also known as a fiduciary, to step in your shoes and conduct business as if they were you, but legally, right? You are entrusting this person, or you can have co-powers of attorney. I don't really recommend that, but you can have a power of attorney, but you can also have a successor. You can have an alternate in case the primary refuses or is unable to serve. So that power of attorney can pay bills for you. They, pay your mortgage. They can institute, they can start a claim. They can meet with an attorney. Let's say if you were the victim of someone else's negligence, while you're in the hospital, that person that you've named as power of attorney can seek out a personal injury attorney and initiate a claim on your behalf, while you're getting care, while you're getting
Sure.
rehabilitated, right? So that's one of a very practical one. The paying the bills is also another one too. So those are examples of the most common, estate planning tools that we have.
That's great. That's great. What are some of the misconceptions that people have about estate planning?
I love this one, and I've done a number of videos and blogs and stuff
Oh,
about
you
this.
have.
Like miss, I have.
And I highly recommend your videos to everyone who's watching. There'll be a link in the description, but Elsa does a great job at breaking down complicated topics into very understandable subjects.
Thank you so much, Peter. Yes, I have an entire library of videos on YouTube at Elsa W. Smith Law. But let me get to your question on some of the myths. One, and it's one that, funny enough, people try to somehow get around estate planning. They try to say, well, I can do this and I don't really need an estate plan. For example, I can give my daughter access to my bank account and she'll only use the money to pay for my expenses. Okay, let me tell you something. When you add anyone as a signer, not a beneficiary, when you add anyone as a signer on your bank account, you are giving them the power to wipe you out. And I know, and I want your viewers to hear me. I know that you're probably thinking that it's convenient. My daughter or my son, they're good kids. They wouldn't do that. But let's say if your daughter or son's kind of running into a tight financial situation, right? And they go, well, and if you've got 25 grand sitting in a checking account and they're in a bit of a bind. And what if they say to themselves, they convince themselves that this is okay. Well, I'll just take 5,000 to cover my expenses this month, but I'll pay it back. That's not what you intended. That money was meant for your expenses, whether they be end of life expenses or, during your life, medical expenses, whatever the case may be. But you place them on the account for the sake of convenience, not so that they can make personal loans to themselves for their own expenses. But you have given them the key. You have given them the authority to do that. And guess what? The bank can't hold them accountable because the bank's going to look at the account documents and go, well, Mrs. Jane Doe, you added them as a signer on the account. There's nothing that we can do about that, right? So that's one of the things that I talk about with my clients, and I have heart-to-hearts with them. I said, listen, you know your family better than I do, but I'm telling you from my professional experience, sometimes that is not the best way to go. There are other things that we can do,
Right.
like creating a power of attorney, right? Which, by the way, you can revoke once you no longer need that power of attorney, right? So that's one myth. And another one is, well, I don't need to worry about estate planning or incapacity until I'm much older. Wrong again. How many times have we, either through our own personal relationships or people that we know of young people who have become disabled because of a tragic accident or some debilitating disease? How many young people, 20s and 30s, do we know that maybe suffer from things like MS and other, degenerative diseases, right? So that whole idea of incapacity is just for the elderly. You need to shatter that myth, because it's not true. I encourage.
Everybody should have a power of attorney. You just never know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's not, yeah, a power of attorney is a very important document, but it's getting people as early as their 20s, as their young adulthood, as they're coming into the workforce, to start thinking about these plans. And an estate plan is going to change over time. Let me give you one more of the myths before we go on. Is Attorney Smith, I just need a simple will. And I'm doing this because this is the phone calls that I'm hearing. I just need a simple will. I don't need anything else. Listen, people hear a lot on social media, on, all various types of social media, and they think they know what they want. The purpose of meeting with a professional like an estate planning attorney is to, first of all, examine your particular situation. A will is fine, but that's usually the entryway into estate planning. Your chances are you're going to need a whole lot more than just a will. What are the documents in place to protect you now,
Right.
while you're sitting in my office, while you're alive, right? So people think they know what they want, but and sometimes, in all fairness, they may not know how to articulate it. They may just say, well, I need a will, and at least they recognize that. And let me give them credit for that, for recognizing that they need a will. But a lot of times it's a whole lot more.
Yeah, no, and it's the concepts are not that simple. I mean, it's the whole idea about probate and getting things done. It takes time, and there are a lot of really smart people who don't get it. So you need somebody like yourself to help walk them through, and somebody with your patience is a big plus.
I'm glad you said that, Peter, about no matter the intelligence level or whatever. Most of my clients, they are professionals. They are middle income, higher income individuals. College educated by and large, not exclusively, but by and large. And they are what I call, many of them, not all of them, are what I call first gen when it comes to
Right.
estate planning.
Right.
That their parents may have had little life insurance over here, a little pocket of money over there, but never a comprehensive plan, never a will, right? So they are coming onto the scene, and now they're walking away after they work with us with a comprehensive plan. And I mean, if you want to go deep with it, they are shifting the trajectory in that family's lineage.
Absolutely.
Right? Because here's the thing, if they've got a teenager who is seeing mom and dad come back home with this portfolio, the conversation will begin. Well, what's that? I met with an estate planning attorney, right? And then the kid, it becomes the conversation is normalized in that family about estate plan, a will. That has a significant impact in, maybe not right away, but when that child becomes an adult, they're going to look at the two people they trust and love the most, their parents. How did they do it? How did mom and dad do it?
And also, if the parents are doing it for themselves, most likely they're communicating that with their children, and which is very important, which doesn't always happen. In the case of my children, my son is my partner, and he's had an estate plan since he was 28 years old, and he's so proud of it, and he's always pushing it on his friends. and talking to them about the need to have an estate plan for people in their 20s who are just starting out, which is really true. And I mean, he's fortunate in that he has that education.
Absolutely. Good for him. Good
Yeah.
for him for being
Yeah.
an advocate of that. Because a lot of times young people, you're concerned, and particularly if you're, type A, you're go, 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 you've maybe, gone to college or you're in the military or whatever, and you're making money and you're not thinking about estate plan. You're probably thinking about maybe, putting down payment on a new house, maybe thinking about starting a family, all those other things. But estate planning is usually not on the top of the list.
No, it's like insurance, it's like people don't want to deal with their life insurance because it talks about death, as well as
Exactly.
estate plan, but it's so critical. It's really important, and luckily there are professionals like you out there to help people. So thank you so much. I mean, this was a great interview and wonderful information. And as I mentioned, Elsa's information will be at the end of the video, as well as on the podcast. And what's the best way for people to reach you, Elsa?
Before I do that, I did want to mention self plug. I do have I host my own podcast. It's called Wills, Women, and Wealth Podcast. It's on Apple, Spotify, and that'll be in the show notes as well. But we talk to professionals like Peter. I've had Peter on the podcast as well. We talk to professionals like him, and my joy is bringing them to my audience because I truly believe in a holistic approach when it comes to estate plan. You need a team of people who know more than you, quite frankly. The reason, I, as a business owner, as well as an attorney, I have several people on my team, bookkeepers, CPAs, et cetera, et cetera, because I just want to work in my zone of genius, which is estate planning and probate, and I hire people to do the rest.
Zone of genius. Yeah. I've never heard that before. I love that.
And and people should do the same. Peter, they hire you.
I want to do I want to do what I do best. I stay in my lane.
Absolutely. And people hire, someone like you to take, to organize life's daily demands. I mean, your tagline says it all, right? So it's so critical to really surround yourself with professional people like yourself who really have a heart to serve. And that's really important to me.
Yeah, no, and I couldn't. It really does take a team of people, and no matter how smart you are, you can only do so much, and you have to reach out to other experts and to manage things in your life. And I appreciate that. And I agree. Your podcast is wonderful because you bring to it yourself and your attitude, and the guests have the same information. So it's wonderful.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Pleasure. Okay. So thanks again, Elsa. We'll see you soon. And bye, everybody. And hope to see you at our next podcast. Take care.